Let me tell you what's crazy. I'm having students just recently. A student told me that they took my course not because of the psychology, because it's not their major, but because they wanted to learn how to use AI appropriately. It's the first time I've ever heard this. So, this is a computer science major, and his wife actually took my psychology course last semester. And so she was telling him last semester all the things that they were doing with AI in the classroom and how she was learning how to use it using the DIVER framework so that it would help her discover and interact with the information, then verify the information, edit the information, and have a reflection. And she was telling her husband how much she was learning using this process. And so her husband enrolled in courses and said to her, what class was the class that you learned how to use AI? And she said it was her psychology class. So he wasn't really interested in psychology, but it was part of his general ed anyway, so he made sure and enrolled with me. This is interesting because we don't have an AI literacy class at our college, and they've really left it up to faculty to figure out how much or how little, how they are going to use AI in the classroom, how much or how little they're going to allow their students to use AI in the classroom. And so, because we have this myriad of different uses or teachers saying you can, you can't, this is appropriate, this is not appropriate, what I'm starting to see and starting to hear is that students from my classes are telling other students, have you taken Mr. Fortune's class? Because on the first day, we learn how we start integrating AI into the learning process. This is, to me, it's super exciting because it just helps to verify the fact that students are hungry to not just use AI to get by, but they're going to start, they're using it in there every day. They know it will save them time, and it will even save them time studying because they're studying the information that they need to remember. I know that part of educators' argument is that they need that time. They need the time, they need to be able to struggle, and they need to be able to go find, and they need to be able to do all that stuff. Because that's part of the process of learning. And my argument is really that used to be the process of learning. And now we can have students not only discover information, but interact with it in a totally different way that could help them even learn faster. I mean, could it even be possible that there is a way that we could have students learn faster? I mean, we know that students don't learn very well with us just teachers standing in front of them with a PowerPoint reading it to them. And yet I go into classrooms all over the state, and when I evaluate teachers, that's exactly what they're still doing. They're still creating PowerPoints, and they're still reading them to their students. And their students are still sitting at their desks, feverishly writing every single thing on the PowerPoint. When most of the PowerPoint is taken directly from the text, most teachers, or many teachers, are getting those PowerPoints from publishers who are getting it directly from the text. And the teachers are not expanding on the PowerPoints because even if they were, the students are not listening, they're not absorbing, they're not evaluating. What they're doing is writing down every freaking thing on the slide. Even if you say the slides will be provided to the students, they're writing it all down. They're not interacting with that information. They're not absorbing it. I'm telling you, they're not absorbing it. One, you have a 60-minute class, 50-minute class, an hour and 15-minute class, and you're trying to get through 35 slides. So you get to the slide, you read it, they're writing everything down feverishly, and you might even call out and say, hey, do you have any questions about this? I know in most classrooms, you're not getting a lot of questions. And if you are getting some questions, it's from the same one or two students that may have read the chapter before. Now, let's compare that to something else, a different way. What if, instead of having all the PowerPoints, what if you had the students, the concepts from the chapter, and you had students go and discover information about that based on their maybe personality, based on what they like, based on real world situations, maybe what's going on in the world, how does this relate? And had them and gave them the prompts to help them get started. Like, here's a prompt that is, provided as an example. Students, put this in to your AI, maybe your custom GPT or the chosen AI for the course. Maybe it's Gemini, maybe it's ChatGPT. You would give them this. Ask me. I'm a student. I'm trying to learn. We're discovering information. I need you to ask me some questions to help guide me, to help me explore, to help deepen my knowledge of this topic. Ask me some questions to get an understanding of where I'm at, and then provide me with some resources, provide me with some details to help us get started exploring this topic. Now, that's kind of, a bunch of different options. I have a couple that I've used. If you guys are interested in those, let me know. But this is really the discovery phase. And what's interesting about the discovery phase is if you think back to our youth, think back to when you were in elementary school, everything was discovery. You didn't know anything, and so, as you get old, and it was interesting. And even now, as somebody who is an adult on YouTube, when you're scrolling and you hear something that you didn't know, or you're getting news, or you're getting people that are talking about things that you're like, you're discovering that information. And then as adults, we go through this kind of process already where we, you discover it, you may interact with it a little bit, you think about it, and then you're like, hopefully, you interact with it, then you should verify it, do your own research, maybe dig a little deeper, watch another YouTube video, read an article, do a search, something like that, so you can verify that information. Maybe you're verifying it based on your own experience, saying, that's not how I feel, or that's not my experience. Then you might edit your prompt so that you can get more information to help verify. Maybe you're like, hey, I just heard this. Is it true? Can you give me some sources that I can read to help verify that? And then you reflect on that stuff and you say, this is now what I think about this topic. This is what I've learned. And I know, again, educators are going to say, yeah, you're an adult. You know how to critically think. My students don't think. They don't critically think. Yeah, but think about the environment that we're teaching them. They don't have to think if all they have to do is take a PowerPoint and write down what's on the board. And then they put that in that notebook, and you have 10% of your students that are going to look at that notebook again with those PowerPoints on there, unless you have them do something with them. Fill in a worksheet, take a test. And And even then, what's the percentage of those students that are going to take those notes that they had, that they scribbled, that they wrote down as fast as they could, and really have them critically think about those things? I mean, is a test really a multiple choice test? Is a fill in the blank test? Is that really helping them critically think, or is it just helping them to memorize the terms? So when I'm working in my classes and when I'm working on assessments and assignments that we do in class, even if it's an online class, I detail that assignment has a lot of detail. And yes, I use AI to help me detail those things out to make sure that I'm not missing any parts to help my students do the critical thinking. And I give them prompts. I provide them with appropriate prompts, especially at the beginning of the semester. And then slowly, part of the assignments is for me to evaluate the prompts that they used. Are they using discovery prompts? Or are they using prompts that are just going to have them, still try to have AI just do things for them? What I'm finding over time is that students are getting that the discovery prompts are helping them not only find the information, but also giving them options based on their likes. Like, hey, I'm interested in this because of this. Can you help relate it to something that's in the real world? And as they get that, they're thinking about it. If you're doing discussion questions, again, this is something that is possible to have the interaction be online, but the questions might have to be different. I've really had to think about what questions I'm asking. I just recently had a student, I was getting my coffee, and the person that gave me my coffee is a student, and she asked me, what do you think about AI? And I said, well, what do you think about AI? She goes, I think it's really helpful. I just gone back to school. It's really helped me as a student going back to school. I'm not using it to cheat. First thing she said, I'm not using it to cheat, which that could mean a lot of different things, because cheating is, different for, again, what her teacher is saying is cheating. Is she just using it to brainstorm? Is she using it to help create ideas? Is she giving it her ideas and having it help organize them? What is she using ChatGPT for, and how does she think it's appropriate? I think this is the one of the issues. But what she said is that it's really helping her learn faster, because she's using some of these new tools that have come out with AI, like deep learning. And I just heard of a new beta. It's out in beta. You have to sign up for it to get access through Gemini, and it's called Learn Your Way. And you can put in Gemini. You can put your textbook in, and then you could basically tell Gemini a little bit about you. Like, I'm a soccer player in college, and it will adjust some of the content to be relatable to you, not the necessarily the content that's needed, the steak and potatoes, the main parts, but the pictures will be a little bit different, so that it is more interesting to the user or to the student, so that the student who's reading it, it's more interesting to them. And we find if it's more interesting, they're gonna want to read it more, which, I mean, to me makes sense. I don't want to read stuff that's not interesting to me if I don't think it applies to me. If I think that it applies to me, that's why I feel like my general ed students in psychology. Um, you know, I have a lot more general ed students um, who fail my classes because they don't do the work, because it doesn't mean that much to them. I have a lot more general ed students that start my class using ChatGPT and AI to try to have it do the work for them. And so building a very robust, building a very detailed assignment with steps that integrate AI in a way that I want them to use it to discover, to interact, to verify, then edit, then reflect on that process and their thinking and how their thoughts have changed. What did they learn? Going through that process of DIVER really has changed how students use AI in my classes. And I am seeing the results of their learning, not only on their assessments, but in the discussions in class, which is a huge driver for me for them to have to think. They're thinking about things because when they know that they're going to have to share it with others, they become kind of the expert. And how they do that? Because they discovered information that was new to them in a way that allowed them to think.